Welcome to another episode of Insurance Unlimited, a limited series podcast. A podcast looking at all things insurance, sponsored by the lovely team at Endava. Today we're going to switch things up a little bit, and instead of just hearing from me, I've included my partner in crime, Karen Houseago. Karen's our personal lines expert at Endava and works alongside me on a daily basis, telling me how wonderful the wonderful world of personal lines is. Today, what we're going to try and do is sort of reflect on some of the challenges and some of the innovation that we see in the personal line space, and reflect on how our specialist insurance partners could take some of that learning and bring it into the specialty lines market. So, Karen, welcome. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. I think I'm really here just to keep you in check, aren't I?
I think so. Yeah, we go off tangent every few weeks, and you've come in to govern us. But our guest today is the main attraction. So apologies, Karen, you're not the main attraction this week. Maybe next week.
Not the first time I've heard that.
Not sure about
No. Joking aside. So today we've got Nick Sproul from SP Partners, and Nick's got a fantastic background in the insurance market. And on a previous call, we realised this could be a 3 or 4 hour podcast. So Karen, you're going to keep us in check because we're both quite passionate about this market and specifically claims. Nick, could you give us a little bit of a background to yourself?
Yeah, great. Yeah, really pleased to join you. Paul, if it's anything like our first meet, it's going to be a blast. And so I'm a sort of frustrated technologist, came into the insurance market almost 20 years ago thinking that I was going to be the new kid on the block, disrupting all the things that were wrong with it. And 20 years on, here we are on a podcast talking about all the things that are wrong, all the things that need changing. So engineer by trade, so that kind of gets me involved into the process of claims, etc. More recently, I've been involved, across the whole personal lines spectrum. Specifically, I'd say my sweet spot is around personal lines, P&C, property in particular. Most recently, I was an exec at Gallagher Bassett, so large TPA until last year. And as you rightly introduced me, I'm now managing partner for SP Partners, where we're trying to work and collaborate with anybody who wants to work and collaborate with us, to be honest, in the right way. So, very, very brief, but that's me.
Brilliant. Thank you. And Karen, could you give us a little bit about your background, please?
Yeah, so I'm Karen Houseago. My background is personal lines. I worked at LV for 17 years. Primarily during that time, I managed the PCW or aggregators, whichever you want to kind of call them. Managed that channel for the business. I then left there in 2021 and worked for on the B2B side, which was very different, for Consumer Intelligence, which is a company who provides data and insights for the personal lines market. I then finished there last year and am now doing some consultancy work, obviously through Folio Group for Endava.
Perfect. And I'm slowly indoctrinating you into the world of specialty and the Lloyd's market, which is interesting, shall we say? Because it is different. I mean, we joke and we always say that we look at the personal lines market and we get jealous actually at some of the products and simplifications, shall we say. And then the more I get involved, the more I go, actually, this is not as easy as I thought it would be. And, we all sit on our perch in the Lloyd's market, but actually it's both areas are hard, right? It's tough what we're trying to do. Good.
I think they are, but I think what I've found so far is it's all about the customer with personal lines. Whereas you don't think so much about that with commercial lines. So I find personal lines so interesting because we're all customers, aren't we? Yes. So we all know what we want. It's almost easier because we know what our demands are and what our expectations are. It's just how we get there.
Yeah, I think it's difficult when you think about that from a specialist lines perspective. We don't go out and buy kidnap and ransom every day, do we? So it's pretty hard to kind of. Thank God we don't. Nick, what's your perspectives?
Yeah, no, I think so. I've sort of had a bit of benefit with my time at GB on looking at the commercial and the personal lines areas, and they are very, very different, and they attract different people, and the sort of London Lloyd's market is different again. I think there's an awful lot that could be learned between the whole spectrum, and I think one of the things that I'm going to touch on is how to improve collaboration within those different market sectors. Because at the end of the day, there is a customer, be it a commercial lines customer, personal lines customer, at the end of a claim, and they want to have the best seamless service to be paid out, settled as possible. So, yeah, definitely going to highlight and touch on collaboration areas during our chat.
Yeah, it's hugely important, right? Well, I'm going to stop asking the questions because for once I get to sit back and answer a few, which is going to be an interesting side for the table to me to be. Aaron, do you want to kick us off?
I can. So I'm going to start with kind of how we've got to where we are. So how have you both seen the claims industry evolve, and what do you think's driven that evolution?
Yeah, let Nick go first.
So I'm a bit of a storyteller, so if you don't mind, I'm going to weave in some real life examples of this. And so how's it changed? So I'm going to start with digitization. About 16 years ago, I was doing a presentation to a very large personal lines insurer, and we were trying to improve the speed and efficiency between a property loss claim being made and it being assessed and triaged, etc. And one of the things I presented, and it was around about when we started having video as part of our smartphone. And I said, wouldn't it be a great idea if maybe the customer could take a short video, we could call it a video survey, and share that in some format. I was pretty much marched off the premises because there were so many reasons why that was not possible. And it started with the size of the file, and that would basically take up so much storage capacity, etc., etc. So that's a true story. Now, I would say pretty much every personal lines property claim has an option for the customer to submit and upload a video of the damage. So it's taken some time, and there are lots of different services for that. But digitization is definitely something that has moved the industry forward. Certainly in my time, moved the industry forwards, and that's an example of it. If we bring it into the present day, virtual claims handling, so that virtually submitting a claim where nobody needs to be deployed, so there's a cost saving there for the insurer, etc., etc. They're definitely areas where I see more opportunity than what we've currently achieved.
I think it's from what I've seen, like when you look at awards, was it Lemonade did the 2-second claim? With your story from 16 years ago, how have we got to 2-second claim? I'm assuming that was a very simple one, but it's clearly kind of leaps and bounds ahead, isn't it? Is it the same, Paul, in commercial lines as well?
No, we get really jealous when you guys get to say stuff like that. So, my background, I started as a claims broker and carrying paper files around the London market, and it's probably asbestos pollution claims from 1987 that I was still trying to get agreed. And our biggest advancement in the 20 years is that we don't always use paper files now. We've got a centralized claim system, which is it's not really that much of an advance when you think about where technology is today, when you think about sensors and IoT devices and the way that personal lines are starting to capitalize on those technologies. The Lemonade stories is a fantastic one, but I just can't see us doing a directors and officers or a cyber claim in that way. But we're starting to partner with people that can, and I think the advance I've seen is that we're much more open to working with outsiders, as we like to call them, but technology firms, insurtechs that have got solutions that we can use. Part of the challenge is we can't use it across the board, so they're very boutique. Like we might have a insurtech that's got a cyber assessment tool, which is really, really good, but it only works for cyber. You can't use it for other classes. So I think that's part of our problem.
Right.
It's not a holistic solution. So you end up with 25 solutions for all the different products you get. But I think with the advances in AI and where we are now, we're going to find some things that help us across more product lines, I suppose. At least I'm hopeful.
Yeah, I completely agree. And you know, it's interesting. You just listened to what you were saying. You've only got to see the growth recently of, and there's a couple of these InsurTech events where they showcase InsurTech.
Yeah.
I went to ITC DIA Barcelona last year, and yeah, there's definitely, and it also just being to the point, there's an awful lot of private equity investment going into these businesses, and private equity have got some experience in, and they go into markets where they see this growth opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely.
So but you're right. We're not quite there yet, is what I'd say.
Yeah, I think it's interesting when you talk about personal lines, and commercial specialty, whatever we want to call my background, but it's the same thing. And I think you said it when you started, Nick. It's about transparency for me. It's like when you have a claim as an individual, you want to know what's a rough estimate of how long it's going to take. Is it big and nasty? What bumps in the road am I going to get? But that's all around transparency. I want my expectations managed. And the same for a business, right? They go through a broker, and the broker wants to go to the carrier and say, is it big and nasty? What's the potential timeframes? What do I need to tell the client? I want my expectations managed. And I think fundamentally it all comes down to the opportunity we've now got with like data and technology to actually start assessing sooner and understanding, is this a really big nasty claim, or actually is it worth just paying it? I think it works across both.
But I think communication is a huge part. So whether you're a customer or a business, I think that's where claims potentially has got a bit of a bad rap in the last few years, because customers, they just want to know where you are. How long is it going to take? Where am I in the cycle? And I think Personalised has gone lots of steps towards getting that better. But is that the same in commercial lines? Do you feel like that's moved on and evolved as well?
No, I don't think we've got the transparency. So, Nick, I'd be interested to get your perspective on this. But from a commercial perspective, it's very difficult with the systems that we've got and the complexity of some of these claims. We might have 6 or 7 different third parties helping us. So in cyber, we might have credit monitoring experts, we might have forensic experts, we might have legal assistants, and they've all got a part to play. And it's very difficult to understand where they all are at any one time. And I think that's where the technology's got to go. The workflow's almost got to be fully transparent to know. We have an awful time with just fee payments for all these different third parties. And then there's the authority limits that need to be covered. So when you're in, and I haven't been a claims adjuster for many years, but I help design these target operating models for claims teams. It's really complex, when you think about the different people that are involved.
Yeah, it's so again, I'm going to give you an example here. So what I'd call a sort of standard personalised a claim where there's no third party involvement, so there's no recovery. It's fairly straightforward, and albeit there's buildings etc. involved, but at the end of the day, it's reasonably straightforward. When it changes, and we covered this at conference last week, and for example, there is a third party involved, and that third party is one of the London boroughs, and it involves a tree, and the tree's on a public highway, and the property that the insurer is covering as their liability, it's been impacted by the tree that's third party. It becomes incredibly complex.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And lengthy. I mean, really lengthy. A typical one of those types of claims is 2 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And so you ask yourself, why is that? And quite interestingly, I won't pick on that, but I'll give some examples. And I think, Paul, you'd be really interested in what you think about this. So the first one that comes out is, well, we've always done it like that. We need, so we've always needed at least 1 year's data to understand what the tree is actually doing. So, okay, why? Because there's 4 seasons and we need data over 4 seasons. You actually don't anymore. That you can actually get enough data in about 12 weeks roughly, but it's changing those that mindset, and you'll get this, and certainly I think in the sort of London market, I'm imagining that you've got a lot of situations where it's just always been done that way.
Yeah, we call it legacy thinking, right? And
Yeah.
I try to ban those words when I was working in corporate life. It's because it's the way it's always been done. I find it really, really frustrating, and it's a everybody is incentivized differently, and the question is, how do you incentivize people to never use those words again? It's just hard, and in Lloyd's we hang on to our tradition like no other, right? We've still got the Lutein Bell, and we've still got the Lloyd's building, and we've still got the Lost Book, and some of that actually does drive those behaviours because we like our legacy, we thrive on it, but actually it changes people's mindsets to think a bit old fashioned, shall we say. I think my job has always been as a change agent, or whatever you want to call it, is to try and get people out of that and show them what good looks like. We did a very good technology test a few years ago. We had a fish tank, and I always tell this story in this podcast, people get really bored of it, but we had a fish tank. We put a sensor on a boat, and we sank it in this fish tank at an executive committee, and it made a payment come out of our system. And what we were trying to show them was that we had the capability to do smart contracts, as you might call them, or parametric triggers. We've got these capabilities, it's built in our system. Let's just get going. If it wasn't for all these mindsets, we would have been able to implement that. And guess what? We never did. And that's because there was 5 or 6 different people in the chain that had to be convinced that that was the right thing to do. But the lengths that we would go to try and change people's mindset were, we had to be quite creative with some of the things that we did.
Do you think then that in the commercial space there isn't the appetite to change? Because I see it in the personal line space, but you talk about legacy thinking. Is there not the appetite to kind of push boundaries and test and learn?
I think there absolutely is, and we've got some of the world's leading experts in our claims community. Very, very important ex-lawyers, engineers. These people are curious by nature, right? They've evolved. I think the challenge is, as I said, it's on a product by product basis, a lot of this stuff. So you might be a marine hull claims adjuster, and you find the best bit of technology, but you have to get in a big long backlog with everybody else. You're fighting for attention. I think a lot of the time you're fighting for investment, and you've got to prove that return on investment. And the other challenge is, you've got to prove how it differentiates your business. Whereas I think in personal, it's probably a little bit easier because, there's 4 or 5 products. You might do motor, home, pet, travel, but actually there's some similarities between the way the data works and process. Yeah. Assuming Nick's going to tell me.
Yeah, no, there is. And a key in personal lines, a key element of claims management is collaboration with supply chain.
Yeah,
and that's evolved massively over the years. Right down to the fish tank example actually is a good one, because a similar example of that would be certainly since I've been involved in the industry, the supply chain has been given a huge amount more autonomy and delegated authority to cash. Literally. So these are people in the supply chain, or businesses, in the supply chain. And in some cases, on a personal lines claim, have a delegated authority up to as much as £75,000, and they can just deal with that claim. They can cash settle it. They can part cash settle it. They can just, and that is quite transformational. And Karen, the company that you used to work at, that they've actually, to a certain extent, led the way in this. And I think others have somewhat followed as well. But that sort of, I mentioned it earlier, collaboration and engagement, involvement with supply chain has definitely improved the outcomes for the customer actually in personal lines.
I mean, that's what it's all about, right? It's the end customer, and I think that's where my frustration comes from. Don't get me wrong, there are some people in the London market doing some fantastic stuff, and in the US as well, and all over the world. It's just not enough of it, in my opinion, and it's the end customer that suffers with everybody touching it and everybody having a piece of the action. It just slows things down, and I think this is one of the stories that I had from years ago was, it was just after COVID and lots of businesses were going under. And actually, there's a lot of founders of businesses was really struggling to understand. They got cash flow issues, business interruptions, losses, not getting paid. The insurers weren't stepping up. And actually, there's a lot of mental health issues that came from that. And actually, sadly, a few founders ended their lives. And it really, really got to me, because I've always been a big advocate for mental health, and it really got to me because actually, as an insurer, it's within our remit to make things move faster, right? We can do it. If we really wanted to do it, we could do it. We've got the technology, we've got the people. So why not? And I couldn't find a good enough excuse or a good enough answer as to why we can't manage cash flow better, right? How can we pay claims faster? And actually, Lloyd's is doing an awful lot with its Blueprint 2 centralized infrastructure to mean that we can make payments quicker. There's less regulatory red tape. I think we've just got to do better. Like when you hear stories like that, it's kind of heartbreaking.
So
Completely agree.
Go on, Nick.
No, I was just going to say, had some direct experience during COVID with the BI claims and the impact that had. And I know that some of the professionals, forensic accountants, etc., that were individually working on that, were hugely motivated. I mean, working ridiculous hours because, Paul, they have the same passion that you speak about. Because at the end of that claim, there was an individual whose business was potentially going to fail, and the impact, and it was. I know that it was really frustrating on the personal level, that they could move things so far, but then there were obstacles that they couldn't move because it involved, the client ultimately agreeing to make a payment.
Yeah. Sometimes they can be just the silliest things, right? It could be just somebody doesn't get the data doesn't flow properly. It could be a naming convention, like we've got the client's name wrong. Well, that's a 3-week fix, whatever it was at the time. But it does wind me up a little bit. So, sorry, Karen.
So, Nick, what would you say? And you can use some of the examples you've already used. But what do you think are the 3 biggest challenges in the industry right now?
We've touched on it actually, and it kind of does throw a bit of a spanner in the works, because the data that is coming out of lots of organisations is quite frightening. So number one is probably fraud detection and prevention. There is a huge growth in fraud, and if the numbers that are reported at carriers at board level are potentially a fraction of the actual real picture. And so a huge fan, and there's some really good stuff actually coming into the market, but huge fan and supporter of InsurTech that can seamlessly, compassionately and transparently detect fraud very, very quickly early on. But there are challenges there, and also we've touched on AI. Guess what? Fraudsters are using AI to find ways to be better at making fraud. Carrying out fraud. So that would be one of them. Another one, and this came out during COVID, and it's sort of increasing. It's sort of complexity around compliance and regulation. That there's a number of, if I just talk on personal lines now, a number of sort of carrier insurers now are introducing ESG requirements into their tendering process. What does that actually look like in the real world? Is tricky. It's complicated. To calculate the carbon impact of rebuilding a house that's been destroyed by a fire, for example. It's got to be rebuilt. There's an impact. So complexity around current and future ongoing regulations, and then the compliance that goes with them. And the third one, which I don't know if you might want to edit this, but I call it the Amazon effect. And it's customer expectation and experience. We all want it now. We expect it.
Yeah.
What do you mean? What do you mean I can't get it today? And I think that, again, in our conference last week, I just touched upon that third-party claim. The vast majority of people that buy an insurance product don't really understand what they're buying. It's very transactional. And I think that maybe some way to educate people what they're buying, and then to set their expectations more realistically, is what is needed. And last week, one of the event sponsors, they did this great little animation video, and it was an example of a third-party trim. This is what happens. And you watch that, whoever you were, you watch it and you say, oh, right, okay, I understand that now. So customer expectations and their experience. Let's face it, at the point of them being settled on something that they've purchased sometime.
It's what the FCA are trying to do, though, isn't it, with Consumer Duty? That customer understanding piece is just, it's such a mountain to climb, I think, when you have so many products to manage and so many people, and how do you get it actually drilled into the culture of your organisation? Paul, would you say those three that Nick's mentioned are the same in the commercial space?
No, there's a couple of synergies, but I think I'm going to be rude. Our biggest challenge is we've made too much money the last couple of years. We're in what we call a hard market, which means rates are high in specialty, and that means actually the claims teams are struggling to be heard over and above the clamour for writing more business, getting more products in. So I think the voice of the claims team is really relatively low. I think in certain instances, certain clients that I work with directly, they're really trying hard to change that, and they're realizing that claims actually can be a real differentiator when we go into a soft market. Actually, it will be about buying habits are going to change, and it will be about service rather than price, because everybody will be pricing roughly at the same levels. I think the second one is the legacy technology problem we've got, in the fact that these monolithic claims platforms are very difficult to change. And then what I'm seeing now is huge amount of investment in AI, different technologies to just streamline some of the processes that we have. So I'm quietly confident, and I'll take a moment to talk about some of the stuff that Endava's doing here, but they're investing in a number of accelerators to help claims teams use AI to automatically read documents, to automatically triage risks, to automatically get first notification of loss straight through the system. So all that stuff is going to be marginal gains. It's going to change the dial, I think. I'm super excited about that. But I'm going to, on the piece, Nick, I think is customer expectations. Our biggest issue is that people want the same experience that they have for their business as they do in their personal lives. And the Amazon effect is an issue, but we've got so many more complications, so many more people in the chain, that it's very difficult to own the customer. We don't, in commercial, when we say we own the client is the broker. That's the relationship we own. We don't always own the client, because then there's a retail broker and then there's an end client. So how do we get closer to our clients? It's fundamentally the biggest issue we need to tackle. And it's how do we do that without upsetting that, that ecosystem that we play in. So yeah, some similarities, but I feel like I'm always saying that it's much more complex, but it's not. It's the same thing.
So, sorry, no.
No, I think, Paul, what you just touched upon, and I hear this from lots of people in your space, in particular brokers, who owns the relationship, and
Yeah.
It's much more transparent in personal lines. It's really straightforward. You know, the customer has purchased a product from their insurance company, and that is the relationship. And as people getting involved in the claims process, you are introduced to that customer through the insurance company. I think in your area, it's just not the same, is it? It's very, very not fragmented. That's the wrong word to use. But to actually get in front of the actual customer, it's probably still with the broker, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think it's where I get a bit jealous. I think, you know, actually in personal, you can absolutely deliver a boutique service to your clients. And I think I've been through claims recently, a claim recently, which was a really, really good experience. Not something I thought I'd ever say, but it was, and it was quite stressful. And actually, I had a good outcome. I think that is not down to, that is just down to hard work, and somebody in that firm has made that boutique service right. That's the differentiator for that firm. And I've now been with them for 3 or 4 years after the event. We hear that all the time, don't we? People have a good experience in claims. It creates sticky relationships, and I think personal lines is doing a much better job than it used to in creating those stickier relationships.
But what made it a good experience? Was it, you know, back to what we were saying before, was it the communication? Was it that company has embraced the technology that's available to it and given you a more kind of digitally advanced and seamless experience? What was it that stood out?
There was a couple of things, really. I mean, Karen, this won't surprise you to say that I don't have a particularly good attention span, and I actually hadn't provided what they asked me for, and actually somebody rang me up and said, "Paul, we can't pay your claim unless you provide this evidence of ownership." And I was like, "Oh yeah, I was supposed to do that, you know." And this is 2 months on, and I'm sitting around going, "Where's my check?" And actually, it was all with me. And so, actually, what could have been better is I should have been able to log in and see exactly what I was due to provide. And I went for a walk.
Could you have
No, not in this instance. It was a third party on behalf of my bank, and I don't think they had those systems in place. But what would have been a beautiful boutique experience would have been for me to have had full transparency throughout the claim on what I was due to provide, because I think in most instances that's probably where it breaks down. And that was what was good about it. And at the end of the day, I got indemnified and put back to the position where I was before the event. So I think that's not a bad outcome.
Yeah, definitely. Nick, do you think that personal lines companies are making the most of the technology that's available to give that customer experience, to make it the best it can be?
Some are, and some are absolutely not. And it's, I'm not going to name names because I might work for some of them. So it's interesting. So again, I'll give an example. So one of the things that when we sort of had a chat, pre-chat on this, we talked about passion about innovation and technology, and what sort of brought me into this industry. So I'm hugely interested in what's the next sort of whiz-bang thing that is going to move the dial for the insurer, and usually invested in that. Actually personally invested in it. So I've actually invested in some of these businesses in order to get that potentially next whiz-bang thing moving internally within a large insurer. It is incredibly difficult. It's incredibly difficult, first of all, to establish what the return on investment could be, because it hasn't happened yet, if that makes sense. It's future. So in order so one of the larger carrier insurers, in order for it to get on to the product innovation potential board, it has to demonstrate that there is a significant return of, it's a number, I'm not going to share, but a significant return. And that's only to get internal resources allocated to actually start the process of potentially running a pilot with it. So that's one example. As another example, a different insurer carrier, where they're a lot more, I'm going to say they're a lot more maverick, and they're a lot more sort of disruptive, if you want, in that respect. And they actually only need to identify a problem within the organization that could be improved, and that problem could be, I don't know, let's say it's a spike in fraudulent claims on jewellery, just for example. And there is a new, there isn't, so I'm just completely making all of this up, but there's a new AI tool that enables quick analysis of the information that's provided to determine if this should go through to settlement or further investigation, really, really quick. This other insurer carrier would be more inclined to fast track that through to a pilot of it.
Yep.
In a very short period of time. I feel like that's a really, apologies, Karen, that's a really long-winded way of trying to articulate. So I guess what I'm saying to conclude is it depends on the insurer, and it depends on the particular problem that there is. So I know right now that in personal lines, conference covered last week, if there was a new whiz-bang thing that could revolutionise and accelerate the settlement of subsidence claims in the property market space, pretty much every insurer would want to be involved, because it's a big problem area. Okay.
Yep.
And but if that was something sort of less of the moment, then they'd be less inclined. Really long-winded. Hopefully I've done the question.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I think what I'm taking from that is it's about risk appetite, isn't it? And that can also be down to the people, like the individuals within the organisation. Like I saw it myself, you know, it can really depend who is making the decisions and how risk averse or risk pro, I guess is the word, they are, and that can make all the difference.
Yeah, I mean, I sat as head of innovation for a large carrier. Sometimes it just comes down to who's got the most energy and who's the most stubborn when people say no, because actually you can have a very good idea, but you've got to get your timing right. The business has got to be in the right mindset. It can't have too much else going on. There's lots of different variables on whether these things get through or not, and it's not always just down to the return on investment. It's timing, which is important. But I think that's good because that allows differentiation, right? If everybody races to market with the same thing, they're all going to look and feel the same. So I think you know it can be a number of those different things.
And that's really interesting, because I always thought the biggest barrier to kind of using this technology that's available was budget. But maybe it's people. Maybe it's just the risk appetite of those individual people.
I think it's always people, because people can choose to add budget and remove budget as well, right? But for me, it's always,
I guess, as well.
Yeah, it's mindset. It's
processes.
You know, I was fortunate enough to work for one of the most innovative insurers in the market, and was always experimenting with slightly different things, but it still came down to personal preference at the exec level at the end of the day, and it had to align to our strategy. There was absolutely no point in going and building a direct channel innovation claims tool. We're never going to do direct. Why would we do it? So it's got to align. It's got to be that that North Star moment that we talk about.
Just to add to that, and this is an example just earlier this month. Client with a problem, so insurer with a problem, wasn't a big problem, but with a problem, and I'd done a paper, one pager on potential solution to problem. It's a good relationship. Conversation started. There's no budget. I said, okay, let me present the paper. Okay, there's no budget. We don't talk to big enough. Presented the paper, and the individual said, better find some budget then.
Win. That's a win. We take those all day long.
Yeah. So you're up for it. It really depends on the appetite and the energy. So that particular person was energized to then go into battle internally, if you like, to identify budget opportunity and sell it. Sell it internally.
Well, this is it, and this is where actually I think a lot of claims practitioners fall down, like heads of claims. They don't realise that they have to be the chief energy officer, and they have to get behind these things. And you can't sit back and moan about a lack of budget if you're not going to go into battle, because the ones that I've seen succeed, some of the carriers in the market that have got fantastic rating from their clients, is all because an individual is willing to go into battle for their business.
So, Nick, I'm interested in what does the future hold? So what do you see in the next 2 years and beyond that?
So we've touched on our chat on AI. So we can't finish this, can we, with a little touch on AI, and Paul and I had a bit of a laugh about this, and it's all around us, isn't it? I think that over the next few years we will see the adoption of AI in claims processing more. It's already actually at play now. It might be called machine learning, but it's not a huge amount of difference. So I think AI technology as it matures, but as important with that, and these two are linked together, and it's something that I'm quite passionate about, is customer readiness and expectations to be processed by a machine, and also the ethical considerations with it. And there's been lots of examples, including the might of Google releasing their AI model and then having to pull it from the market because of bias within the algorithms, etc. So I think we have to consider the ethical use of AI, but I think it's all doable, and that is definitely over the next few years going to be something that is, I think, heavily invested in, and potentially is going to make it. Look, the bottom line is, it has probably the biggest opportunity to make a positive impact to the bottom line of the insurance company, the insurer. And that, I think, is going to drive innovation within claims, and it's going to drive investment that claims has not had previously because of that opportunity to the bottom line and ultimately to the shareholders.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think we always say, I'm going to say AI, Karen, in my side of the market, we're already doing a lot of proof of concepts on it. But for me, it's about starting at what's the bottom 5% I can grab, and what's the bottom 10% of operational tasks that I can take. What I worry about, and you hear me talk about this all the time, is a lack of empathy in the fact that you can put an AI chatbot in to do first notification of loss, but actually something's happened to me or a family member. I don't want to talk to a bot. I want a human. And we're seeing some fantastic proof of concepts where it very quickly switches you from a bot to a human when it notices the sentiment. It notices the sentiment of your voice, or you've had a house fire that actually requires a human to get on the phone. So I think if people use AI intelligently and with empathy, I think we will be so much further forward from, as Nick says, bottom line, but also customer service. Using it to advance customer service, I think we'll be in a really good spot.
That's great answers. Thank you both.
Are you using any chatbots yourself, Karen? Are you pro or anti?
I think you're right. I think the right time and the right place, then yes. But I do think if I've had a claim, I probably want to speak to a human.
Yeah, exactly. I think so. I think human when it matters, right? That's the saying that a lot of people are using.
Exactly that.
No, it's very good. Well, on that note, I think I will wrap us up because we've gone on longer than anticipated, and I knew we would. So there'll be a little bit of editing in this one. Thank you very much, Karen. You are absolutely coming back next week because I really like someone else asking the questions for once. So that's great.
Great.
Thank you for your time, and Nick, thank you very much for sort of being on the podcast and for being so transparent with your answers as well. It's really good to hear sort of really real life examples and to talk about sort of some of the scars you've accrued along the way as well.
Indeed, yes, they've healed. But yeah, no. Hopefully, you've got some useful content.
Yeah,
I'm looking forward
absolutely.
to it.
Thanks very much, and have a good day, everybody.